Hey everyone, it's Mike from GarageBandForiPad.com. We're going to look at the keyboard in this lesson. Such a deep instrument, so many patches, so many different controls to tweak, a ton of stuff to show you guys here. We're going to look at some of the more advanced stuff and try and point out some of the things you may not have noticed already. So inside of the main browser here, we of course have the main section has our classic keyboard. So pianos, electric pianos, raw organs, things like that. As we tab through, get into the synth bass section, synth lead. So they're all categorized really nicely here. But one thing I want to point out is there's actually more than one page of these synth patches. So you can go in and explore the stuff on page 2. And most of these sections has a page 2 for the presets. I'm going to go and check one of these out in particular that has some unique controls, and that's the Hacksaw Bass patch. So we've selected a patch. I want to point out a few things about the controls themselves. The keyboard patches all have similar elements. They all have a series of 4 knobs. They all have a pitch and a mod wheel. They all have a velocity, what's called a split control, and of course the keyboard down at the bottom here. Now these controls behave pretty much as you'd expect, equivalent to their real world components. Pitch bend, goes up and snaps back down. Mod wheel works just as you'd expect and stays where you leave it. These knobs here are a little bit different. In fact, they work in a couple different ways that are outside of their real world equivalents that make them easier to use. For example, the cutoff wheel. If I go ahead and just click a note here, and with my other hand, now you'll notice that the cutoff wheel, I'm actually using it by going up and down and not in a circular motion as you might expect, though it does work in that way. However, for me, I find that being able to go around this in a circular motion is a little bit more difficult. So up and down behaves a little bit more like a slider would, but it's a circular knob. It also works left to right as well if you want. So any one of those 3 methods gives you the exact same behavior. Whatever you're familiar and comfortable with is best, but just to point out how that works may help you out. Okay, cool. So down here in the middle section here, we've got some standard things you probably already figured out, but the octave up and down buttons here and the sustain slider. If I slide that over to the right, I can then go and hold the note. So if you actually hit the sustain, not slide it back over to the left, but just tap it, it unsustains a note. And that works on all of the keyboard patches in the same way. So in this middle here, we then have 3 different keyboard modes, we'll call them. The glissando one allows you to do those sort of cool things like that. The scroll works for the keyboard, but also lets you scroll the keyboard back and forward to go up and down the octave respectively. And then there's the pitch mode, which lets you pitch bend, same sort of thing as your wheel, but just using the keyboard interface down here in the bottom. So you can start to do some really cool things when we combine all of these elements together. Let me show you. I'm going to go ahead and in sustain mode, hit a low C. Play around with the cutoff here. I can drag it up and down and it's still sustaining. So this gives me like a nice little pad, or drone for a bass track. So I'll hit it again, bring it up. And this time, if I bring the mod wheel up, it starts to pulse. This is what's called an LFO, the speed of which I can control with this LFO rate. And get some awfully cool effects going on there. This type of stuff is actually quite a bit more difficult to do in a traditional synth environment because we don't have these multi-touch controls that allow us a whole lot of control at one time. So to show this in context, I've set up a little drum track in the background here. And let's try this again. Cool, eh? So by synchronizing the rate of the LFO to my song tempo, so that's the LFO rate parameter, one of many inside of the keyboard instrument. In future lessons, we're going to check out and explain what the rest of them do, as well as look at the arpeggiator and saving off your own custom patches. If you have any questions, give me a shout, mike@garageband4ipad.com. Love to hear from you guys.